What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of The Weird Perspective. I'm your boy, Derry Cooks, and today I got a special guest, my friend of 18 years, almost 2 decades in the game, rocking together. It's my brother from another. Um, Man, we come together for since high school, 2004, 2003. But anyway, this is my brother right here, my guy, Eddie. What's going on, man? Good having you
man.
on here.
Good, yeah, appreciate it. Long time coming, right?
Long time coming.
Man.
We've been talking about this for like 2 years now, so it's been definitely a long time coming.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, how are you? How's the fam? How's everything?
Good, man. Kids are good. We're expecting a fourth baby
Congratulations. That's a
in
blessing.
2 weeks. So, yeah, it's been a blessing, man. 16 years of relationship and almost 10 years of marriage. I know we're right behind each other, right?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so, we that's kind of like an honor and a privilege within itself, man.
Yeah.
Being able to know each other that long and have a similar background in our relationships, our marriages, man. God is good.
Yeah, been right back to back. So I got with my wife, and then he got with his wife, and then girlfriends, and then now wives, and then I'm coming up on 10 years,
Yeah.
and then you're coming up on 10 years.
Yeah.
So a few months apart there. So our kids right behind each other. I was beating them out for a minute. I got 5 kids, and then you will have 4.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what it is,
Just trying
man.
to catch
So
up,
trying to
baby.
catch up, man. Gotta get it in there.
Yeah.
But man, today I wanted to bring you on to share your experiences with politics.
Yeah.
What things have you learned? What you've witnessed? Things you've experienced. So I want to have a open conversation
Yeah.
about your just experience with politics. And so let's get into it, man. And so just off the top, what led you into getting into politics?
Um, Appreciate you having me on, but the initially I didn't really have any interest in politics at all. Just kind of growing up, um, just really diverse upbringing, having a lot of experience growing up on the west side of Chicago, Humboldt Park, and just being able to have so many experiences coming along the ride, um, and growing up, born and raised in Humboldt Park, moved out west, and currently live on the northwest side, kind of like on the outskirts of the suburbs. Just being able to have that experience and going through the ropes of that. I didn't really have any initial interest in politics. I think it was just kind of one of those things that actually my father um, was always he kind of dabbled in the political field, just
Mm-hmm.
helping politicians. And then once I came along, um, I think the bigger thing was trying to use politics to be able to gain more opportunities in the
Okay.
job field. So I think that's where my interest kind of started.
So you got into politics pretty much to get a job,
Yeah, for opportunity.
for opportunity. So
Yeah.
is that like that's how it works, like in the game of getting a job with the city or getting into one of these high ranking positions and moving up the field. You kind of got to know
Yeah.
somebody to know somebody.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah, that's it's one of those, I guess, unsaid common avenues that goes on with city politics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's common in other cities, but Chicago's kind of well known for that.
Yeah, that's why we call
Um,
it the Windy City.
yeah, so yeah, that's initially why I got into it, just for the opportunity and just kind of being able to gain more experience and see where that interest kind of grew. Um, Fast forward, working for a politician eventually, I was able to gain 6 good years of experience and seeing kind of like the background of how politics works and firsthand be able to work for just public service and helping communities.
Got you. So no ambitions to be an alderman, a mayor,
Uh,
police officer, none of those official positions, none of that.
I think naturally you do. I think naturally I did have an interest for it because you start seeing loopholes and um, different things that you kind of like you wish you can do more.
But that came after
That came after.
after you started working,
Yeah,
right?
not a
So
yeah,
in the
not
beginning, it
to
was
begin
just
with.
like I want to get the city
Yeah,
job,
I
so
had
let me
no. Yeah.
holler at this guy, let me
Yeah.
do a couple things, and so what kind of things would they have you do? What kind of work, or how do you help um them to get those opportunities? What do you got to do?
So we would work on the back end, so campaigns,
Okay,
campaign work, going door to door. You know, just the
handing
normal
out
campaign
handing out
stuff.
flyers like, hey, vote for my guy,
Yeah,
blah blah blah.
pretty
He's gonna
much.
change the neighborhood,
Yeah,
blah blah.
you just campaigning for people and helping support them, and in return, which is I think part of the issue with politics, but in return, you have like a self interest.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, how much research are you doing when you originally started, like for the guy that's running or the guy that you're working under?
Not much
Like
at
you're like,
all, man.
I want to see what this guy's about, or you're just like, I want this job and this dude's gonna get me the job, so let
Yeah,
me go work for him.
literally, just that's exactly what it is. I mean, you kind of get the what everybody else gets when you're passing flyers out. You're getting the good aspect of that person, right?
He
They're
smiles,
they're painting
hey,
the
they're
character of that person.
painting,
Yeah,
taking pictures with kids and babies and all
exactly,
that stuff.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, I knew the minimum. Just whether they served in an army or they have any background in politics, what kind of led them to become an alderman or what background they had to be able to qualify for that. So that's kind of more or less what I knew going in. Yeah, I didn't. There wasn't really much research
Mm.
because it's it's catered to these people are going to give you opportunity, so you kind of brush all that under the rug. You're
Yeah,
just focused on the end goal for yourself.
you're just trying to get in where you fit in, pretty
Right,
much.
yeah. You're trying to make ends for your family and your kids and use the angle. I think I was a little naive to begin with. Maybe I should have known more. But growing up in the city of Chicago, city life, I mean, you're too busy and focused on
I'm trying to make it.
trying to make it and, raise kids and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Um. And so as time went on, what did you start doing? Like, what position did you have when you first got into it?
Um, so I became a constituent services assistant. So I was able just to serve the public in an office setting on behalf of an alderman, and just serving the residents of that district. We call them. They're broken up into 50 districts in the city. So um, we're able just to serve that specific district, which is made up of X amount of neighborhoods surrounding that area where that belongs to that alderman. So
Okay.
I was a constituent services assistant, um, pretty much reception, office administrative work, day to day servicing the community, whether it's city services, public service, if they needed any social assistance with applications or government assistance, things of that nature. That's pretty much what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are these being in that position that you had? Is it how beneficial is it for yourself personally, and then also for the neighborhood that you're serving? Like, is it really people come into the office, they're able to get resources and do all these things? Is it really beneficial to have these positions in these offices?
It is. Yeah, I think those positions are created for the sense of servicing the neighborhood, and people. I mean, people have needs as well as we do. So I think it is beneficial. I think providing the city services, even though the city provides city services through um, whether it be electronically or calling 311,
Mm,
things like that, but it gives you a more personable approach where you can get follow up. You can make sure that these services are following through on what they're going to do, and you have a person, an avenue you can talk to make sure that these things are getting done the right way instead of just asking for it, making a call, and then wondering, a month down the road, did that ever get done or things like that.
Yeah, because you built up a lot of relationships with a lot of different people,
Oh yeah,
even
yeah,
churches, pastors, and stuff like
yeah.
that. You were in some of those meetings. So, what was that like? Being able to network and build up different relationships with different police officers, pastors, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Part of my job was to be able to build um, relationships with different organizations, with CPD. These are the entities and the different organizations around specific neighborhoods, which was our district, to be able to service us. You have to build those relationships in order to provide those services and make sure we have um, relationships with people that are able to help us fulfill those services for people. So I'll give you an example. If we get a call and there's a lady that called into, let's say she called 311 for a suspicious person in her neighborhood. So she calls it into 311. The response time might be, let's just say, on average, you know, 8 to 10 minutes. Well, we would get those calls as well. And being that we have relationships with certain officers that might specifically be assigned to our office, I'm able to communicate with that officer and say, "Hey, are you in the neighborhood? Hey, we just got a call. I don't know if you got the memo already, but this lady." And then in a lot of cases, they'll be like, "Hey, yeah, actually, I am in your district. I'll let my sergeant know. I can head over there right now, and
Okay,
I'll talk to the lady." So things like that that's where it benefits the community to have um, people that represent the alderman and the community.
got
So
you. I got you. So,
yeah,
I got a question about Humble Park. So, we live in Chicago, and Humble Park is one of those places where it's being heavily, what's the word, gentrification is happening
yeah,
in there, where they want to bring down the Puerto Rican flags, and they kind of want to get
yeah, yeah.
all my favorite food restaurants out of there. Um, since you work directly with an alderman, what do you think that alderman can do um, to help that neighborhood?
Uh, that's a hard question because I didn't service that neighborhood, but knowing how the politics works, everything's driven off self interest. So if that alderman meets with, um, let's say, real estate people that want to come in and take over, so
Yeah.
to speak, I guess we call it gentrification. It's like a
Gentrification, because
nicer
that's what's
word.
going on right now. They want
Yeah,
to up the taxes. I
yeah.
forget his name, but he's been doing like a good job, I guess, to keep those businesses afloat.
Okay.
From allowing the billionaires to come in, these developers to come in and kind of take over the neighborhood and tax them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's getting down to the point where it's almost inedible, like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so,
So yeah, just to answer your question in a in the shortest way I can, um, it really depends because if it's self interest and the alderman's on board, and he's getting support from those developers and real estate people, and then vice versa, they're helping each other out. Um, the alderman or the person in that area might see it as a way of bringing resources and upping the value of his district and bringing more value to the residents that support him. Then he might agree with it. Whether or not that means some of us minority are cut out. Those the middle or lower class that are unable to afford these different housing opportunities or whatever the case may be. Um, it's one of those. I mean, it's not an easy thing to talk about,
mhm,
but it's pretty evident that it happens, and
yeah,
it's going to continue to happen. So it's kind of inevitable, like you said.
yeah. I don't. I'm 50-50 with gentrification. I probably have to have another video where we could talk about the pros and the cons of gentrification and if it's really bad for people. How bad is it? Should we allow it? Stuff like that. So we'll get into that in another video. Um, but I do. You brought up like self interest, and so in your experience, how was that self interest? What did you observe from your alderman or from other
Yeah.
aldermen that you were around to
Yeah.
speak on that.
Yeah. And on record, I before I answer that question, this is not the purpose here is not to kind of bring out the darkness or um, the tell all.
Yeah, we're not here to bash people. We
Yeah,
just want
I'm
to.
not doing that.
We're just sharing experiences with
Yeah.
certain. And so this is a general answer, general conversation. So it's not to put anybody on blast or air
Yeah.
out dirty
Yeah.
laundry or nothing like that.
Yeah. Not only that, it's just speaking truth, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we got to hold one side or the other. We can't. So in truth, um, yeah, a lot of things that I observed was exactly that. I always kind of go back to the word self-interest because that's exactly what it is. So whether or not I agree with you,
Mm-hmm.
um, you might be able to provide something that is in my best or self-interest. Therefore, we're going to negotiate whether or not that means that it harms or hurts a certain area or a people or neighborhood or residents. And that was my biggest red flag, being able to observe this. So um, if I can kind of give you an example, is no it's uh, pretty well known, right? We have a southern side of Chicago
Mm-hmm.
that most would consider, highly minority, lower
Right.
class, low income,
South Side,
right?
Inglewood.
South side, right? Exactly. And they'll tell you, oh, this is where the most resources are needed.
Right.
But that's a cover, that's a blanket they put over to continue to keep us kind of suppressed in that sense. Because what happens is,
Mm.
and this is going to kind of go a little deeper, but it goes into whether or not these people vote, whether or not you're getting support, and
Yeah.
that's what I mean by
I just found out
self-interest.
about census.
Yeah, census, right?
Like 2 years ago, I'm like, I just found out as a 33-year-old what census are and how important it is. And
Yeah,
it's like, did you send in your census? I'm like, well, let me start looking this up. So you look into the census, and it's like, yo, everybody should be filling out these census forms when they get sent to your house. And a lot of reasons why we don't get the resources that we need is because we don't. A lot of
yeah,
the times, right?
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it is based off self-interest, and what happens is that they'll look at voting records, they'll look at whether or not this specific neighborhood or this X amount of group has supported that specific alderman or government that's in charge in those different areas, and whether or not they have or not, that's how either you'll get a quicker service or whether or not they're going to allocate funds or resources to this specific neighborhood. Now, for the sake of diversity and inclusion, right, and to be able to look good to the public eye, they're obviously going to throw something, but you'll get the shorter end of the stick
Right.
because there's less support,
We're
there's
gonna put
less
$10 million
voters.
over here, but y'all only get $1 million
Yeah,
out of that
and
10
not to
million.
say that, I mean, I get it. I mean, it's your right. If you want to, if you choose to vote or not, even though it's our right. We're supposed to be a part of that process. But
Yeah, this is the way it's set up that we this is how we affect our
yeah,
neighborhood
exactly.
by voting. So it's you can't just get out here and just start doing some
Yeah,
other go down some other avenue. You got to vote, get the people in there that's really gonna do what they need to do. And voting, I mean, it's kind of a gamble, but
yeah,
we'll talk about that another time.
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much an example. As an example, um, whether or not they need, resources for schools, it all comes back into self-interest. You go down to whether or not you have good relationship with CPS or not. So let's just say that alderman doesn't have good relationship with CPS or CTU or um, different organizations or developers that agree with you. If you don't have that support, it's almost like if you don't have enough relationships or
Mm-hmm.
they're not in your best interest or you don't have a good relationship, you can kind of X that out. You won't get the resources and it'll continue to
Wow.
down that slope.
So yeah, that's pretty much politics.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something about self interest, and so do you think that there is a hidden agenda of politics?
I do. I mean, I do because if everything's based off self-interest, um, somewhere down the line, based off your self-interest, your character is going to show. So then you're going to start catering to perhaps something you desire. And that's where I think the desire, I mean, the agenda kind of lies within. Um, and and that the agenda, so to speak, is for the greater good of who's supporting me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the agenda. It's not, so to speak, what they talk about in the public eye. We're here for the people. You know, I'm here to service and provide uh,
Right.
equality across the board. No, it's not true because behind closed doors, when you're having backdoor negotiations, backdoor conversations with lobbyists or different groups, neighborhoods, schools, developers, or investors, it's all going to come back to what your end goal is.
Right.
So, and I can kind of give you somewhat of an example with. So I no longer work for this public official,
Mm-hmm.
but for the past 6 years, I was a high demand employee. I was, no, everyone that maybe 70%, 80% of the people that walked through the door would ask
For you.
for me specifically to service them because I provided, such well knowledge, service, or I was able to get things done quicker. But back to self interest. When you have a self interest and people no longer fit that agenda or maybe fit what you believe in or are going for, then you're willing to cut even a quality employee for the sake of the agenda or
Right.
whatever movement you're trying to,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's a real hard thing to find balance with.
yeah,
It's gonna lead me to another question that I was gonna have for you, but I don't know how we can. There has to be real balance, like, because you can't say like I have ambitions, right? I'm an alderman or I'm a mayor, and it's like I want to go to the next level. So if I'm an alderman, I want to become a mayor, and it's like, well, I got to do X, Y, and Z to become a mayor, and I have to get on board with the people that's going to put me in position to be, to be to get moved up. Um, so it's I gotta fall in line,
yeah,
and so as Christians as we are, like how hard is that? And we had this conversation before, as far as
yeah,
like how hard it is for a Christian, a believer of Christ, to actually be in politics, like on that level, where you got aldermen and mayors and stuff like that.
yeah.
Speak to that, like
It's
as a Christian, like will you see yourself?
it's yeah. I mean, not to say it's none of that is easy. None of that's easy because you're faced with decisions on a daily basis whether or not you're going to compromise what you believe in. And I think the system of politics actually has worked against people, even people that have claimed to be Christian or follow Jesus. That they're compromising their faith and what they stand for, what they believe in, for the sake of the greater good of their jobs
Right,
or their
because
boss, the politicians.
you gotta support those people that are gonna vote for you. So if
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
we already know, like, if you're a Christian and you're against LGBTQ, and then but you gotta support them and give
Yeah.
them what they're demanding, or they ain't gonna vote for you, and that's a big chunk of the people that's gonna vote. It's
Yeah.
almost like, I gotta get this vote in here. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so, um, do politicians really want to help people? Right? Like, Christian or not Christian, do you believe that politicians really want to help people, or is it mostly about my self gain, my self interest, and what I want to do?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to put a percentage on it, but I think the best way I can answer that is initially. I think to begin, I think we all have, I think, the right heart.
Yeah,
Once we come into a situation where we're faced with an opportunity to help somebody, I think we all start off with the right desire to help. Yeah, I think initially a lot of politicians do start off with the right desire to help people. I think they do start that way. and then very few of them actually follow through and stay the course of providing that
Yeah.
help, or maybe even um, achieve their goal of whatever they set out, to achieve, or maybe they made promises to people.
Hmm.
Very few of them actually follow through or able to come through
Mm.
with what they said.
Yeah, I think about this conversation I had with this police officer, and he like originally he got into being a police officer because he wanted to fight crime,
Mm,
and then when he got into being a police
yeah,
officer,
perfect
he
example.
realized really quick that we don't really fight crime. We don't really we just here to just pretty much go after um the bad guys, and but we're not really fighting crime. You
Yeah,
can't make an impact in changing crime. You got to do that from being a politician.
yeah,
And so he eventually left being a police officer, and he wanted to go. He's like, I got to fight crime a different way.
yeah,
And so he went into the politician realm, and not be a cop anymore.
yeah,
And so I think that's what happened, especially when we're young, and then we grow up and we realize, man, this world is corrupt. This world is wicked and it's
yeah,
evil, and men's hearts want what they heart. Everybody has an agenda,
yeah,
and so having an agenda isn't bad. We all have an agenda, and but it's all about what your agenda is and how you're executing that agenda.
yeah.
Um, and so that's really good. And so
The Just to kind of follow up on that, that's a perfect example because to begin with, I mean, we know that this world is has a kind of underlying. It it was kind of born. We can go back to the beginning. Born of sin,
we have a sin problem
a
in
sin
this
problem.
world. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean,
men's heart are wicked above all.
to say that we're gonna change that, um, we have to just do our part in living out um, the Bible as best as we can and being an example to others. But within that, I think a lot of people are faced with compromising, and that was something that I wasn't willing to do. Um, and I think that was partially why I got let go because I started voicing myself and not willing to compromise my faith for the sake of agreeing, and and that became like a kind of like an unsaid issue amongst the office and my peers, and there was kind of like a dividing line. Like you see them, speak to you less, kind of like not,
Yeah,
not invite you into the circles as much, which is okay with me. It didn't, it didn't really hurt because I did my job there, and I did it to the best of my
yeah.
ability.
We know persecution is gonna happen for the Christians. So,
Yeah,
um, well, I don't know how much you can speak to this, but is there a major difference, right, in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as far as how they operate? I know they have different systems and ideas of how they want the
yeah.
country to be ran, but is there a difference in the process and what they go through as politicians? Do you Can you speak to that if you can?
Um, I can speak to it very little, but I can say that yeah, there's pretty clear um, dividing lines on certain topics, so to speak. Um, there's like a cliche thing that is said. It's like both parties are two wings of the same bird.
Hmm.
Um, I think initially everybody is out to try to help this country or um, uh, help the people, so to speak. But the way they go about it and the different avenues and belief systems are clearly there's clearly dividing lines, and then obviously the process behind it is, obviously one party, the Democratic Party, is heavily socialism, and the Republican Party is capitalist. They're driven off capitalism.
Do you
So,
think socialism is a bad thing?
uh,
And what we're seeing the Democratic Party do with in their form of socialism in America,
yeah,
do you
yeah.
think it's a bad thing?
The way I say the last 3 years have kind of clearly brought up red flags of how socialism can be a negative.
So from how Trump was running the country to now how we see Biden running the country.
Yeah, I mean, you give too many voices support or empower too many voices. I mean, you're bound to have instability, and I think that's the negative of socialism. And obviously, we say that we are for the people, but if you empower too many voices, at the same time being in a position of authority to be able to govern, um, you're bound to sway left and right, and it causes too much instability. So
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe reform, as far, I don't know if that even exists, but like maybe reforming how socialism or the process in which it goes kind of is yeah, kind of the process behind it
Yeah.
would kind of be something to bring up. But yeah, I think it creates too many instabilities, and we've seen that in the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. I think the problem that we have here in America is that we have there is you're either all the way to the left or you're all the way to the right and there's no middle ground. And so like there's some good things like that people can bring up about
Yeah,
socialism like hey, if I need the government steps in and they help me until I get to a certain point where I can take care of myself,
definitely.
right? And
Yeah,
so that's the balance. It's like hey, we're going to help you
yeah,
and so, but in our country, it's like we're just gonna help you, and you don't have to do anything and take any responsibility for yourself
yeah,
and providing for your family. We're just gonna give, 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 and then the Republicans are like, we're gonna give, but hey, you got to go fill out jobs. You
yeah,
got to update your resume. You got to do all these things so that you can get a job. So eventually, we don't have to support you anymore.
yeah,
And I think that one leans really hard. Well, they
yeah,
both they lean either really hard this way or they lean really hard that way, and so they're always clashing.
yeah. And I think behind that's kind of the hidden agenda of the negative agenda behind that is that you help, you overhelp to the point where it becomes a crutch, and then you talk about politicians and the different governments that are in place, like aldermen or governors of different cities. That's where it creates an issue because you bring in, um, you overhelp and you suppress these people to the point where they can't help themselves and they're
Yeah,
relying on government. And then we step in and say, "Hey, if you help me, I'm going to help you."
right.
It's almost like you're creating a
Or
cycle,
or they don't want to help themselves. So they
right?
get to the
But
point
you
where it's
create the
just
cycle of, I can always use, go back for help and fall in the cycle of, this is going to be my reliance. I'm going to rely on
eh,
these government
man, it's cool,
people.
man. I'll be reckless with my money. The government,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
just hit them up,
yeah.
apply for this, and then they'll give it to me.
But it kind of works. It contradicts and it works against, um, we the people, because if we fall into that cycle, we'll we will, it's difficult for us to take responsibility and take, initiative for ourselves, and being able to kind of just better ourselves and be able to branch off, so where we can, um, live a life where we can, take responsibility and venture off into what this country kind of provides for us. Is, it provides opportunity, freedom of choice, and it gives us, you know opportunities that we can't find in no other country.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I'll do a quick little side note on that. I think that's why what makes America great. Like everybody says, like,
Mm.
what really makes America great? If we really the greatest country, I think the opportunities and those freedoms that we have to seek out those opportunities is what makes America great. That's in my opinion. Um, you can't go anywhere else and be like, I'm gonna be an astronaut. You go from being homeless to being an astronaut, or you go from being homeless to being the president of the United States. Most of those people who have those political powers in other countries, they're born into that family, and so they're kind of just brought up in that. And so, but in America, you can come from another country, don't know how to speak English, and literally make something out
Yeah,
of yourself.
yeah,
And I don't think you can do that anywhere else,
yeah,
just
yeah.
based on the research and some of the people that I talked to.
That's an underlying thing, because you see that we have an issue. Not nothing against immigrants or um, that process within itself, but yeah, we see immigrants come to our country and are willing to work harder than than we do, and end up, having a well-off living and make a living that is respectable and honorable. And but I feel like the agenda behind um, the American system and the way that the socialism Democratic Party has created that in a negative sense um, has pretty much made us lazy and self-reliant on government, which is part of the issue. Um, I really don't hear presidents kind of mention that because it's all based off self-interest.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, as far as how we should work, how we should handle ourselves, I know we kind of took a turn down being responsible, but I think Jesus, as Christians, like he would have us to be responsible for our money, for taking care of ourselves
Yeah.
and providing for ourselves, and not depending on the government. Um, and I think he holds us to that standard when you read Matthew 25, the parable about the talents.
Yeah.
Like he left it to them to work, to cultivate their gifts and to do all those things, so that they can receive an interest.
Yeah.
And when they didn't do that, um, I know there's a spiritual aspect to that parable as well, but on a natural, like we're called to use our gifts and our talents um, to take care of ourselves, to
Yeah.
benefit us. And in America, we could do that. You know what I'm saying? You got a gift of doing music, that you can easily become a musician right in your living room. So I think that's the responsibility for us as Christians, and I think that's why a lot of Christians lean like more Republican than they do the Democratic Party. But we could have that conversation another
Another
time
time. Yeah.
because that's another
That's a
2 hour
heavy.
right
That's
there.
heavy right there.
And so, do you? How do you feel about the Democratic Party as working for them on the level that you worked for them?
How do I feel about them?
Yeah,
Um.
like because you were working for a Democratic.
Yeah. I don't. I want to answer this as clear as I can. I think both parties have their positive and negatives. I think there is there's agendas on both sides that can be questioned,
Yeah.
whether they're good for people or not good for people.
The
But
only
I
reason
think,
why I asked about Democrat is because he worked for the Democratic
yeah,
Party.
yeah.
So it's
So
not to bash him
yeah,
or
but I
pick
can
one
tell
side
you,
over the other, but he worked. So I'm asking him about his experience as far as
yeah,
working for the Democratic Party
yeah, yeah,
as a
yeah.
Christian at that.
And I'll tell you one thing though. The best way I can describe it is that um, I think it's I think um, they do a good job of building illusions and facades for people that are supporting them and are part of that party, um, because they talk real well in the public eye, and they almost draw you in with certain words like we're here for the people. We don't want people to feel down or left out, and um, we want equality for everyone. They'll talk like that, and it's like, yeah, yeah, that does sound like something I believe in. That sure, and it's catered to the emotion, the emotionality behind people
Mm-hmm.
to draw them in, without providing avenues and clear cut um, um, processes or system in place um, for people to take initiative and be responsible for themselves and their actions. It just creates a drawing in and then a reliance on them, and then you kind of leave them up to continue to rely on
Right, the
us.
government's gonna take care of me. I'm
Yeah,
good.
and I have to just share a story. So during this last campaign, um, being a believer, a Christian, I couldn't compromise, even though they wanted me to make phone calls for a certain party, for the Democratic Party, which was Biden at the time, um, and Bloomberg, that was running for to be a presidential candidate. Um, they asked of us to work on the campaign side to get support and things like that. In which I never stated on my phone calls. So I would make the phone calls and say, "Get out and vote," but I would never state a name. I would never persuade someone a certain way. So I was real strategic in that, and that's one way that I was able not to compromise my faith or persuade someone for a certain party or another.
Right.
So I still did my job, but I did not specify. And then two, to be quite honest, even within the Democratic Party, whether it been the campaign manager for our party, whether it been supervisors that were above me or for our office, all of them, I was able to sit down in a room and ask them questions on how they were brought up, they grew up, were raised, what they stand for, what their beliefs are, and each and every one of them had conflicting beliefs and stances that contradicted the Democratic Party.
Mm.
So it's like you had conflicting people within the same party that are campaign managers and are hurrah hurrah in the public eye, but literally would go back home and would say, would tell me like, no, I was actually my father's a pastor. It's like, what? Like, yeah, I'm actually not pro-choice. What? Like,
Yeah.
like we work for Democratic Party, right? Yeah. I'm like, do you see a contradiction there? It was almost like they're dumbfounded. Like I was making them question what were their stances and their true beliefs were, and they were like they couldn't even answer the question. They just kind of like would fall into the system, and because we work for the Democratic Party, forgot that what they stand for and where their beliefs are, how they were,
Wow.
what their upbringing was about. It was completely mind blowing. It,
Yeah.
it blew my mind. It blew my mind.
Wow. All right. So I want to touch on this, and this is the last thing, and then we'll probably do a part two. We'll do a follow up where
Yeah.
we can really dive into this. But I want to talk about the church and politics, and do they mix? Because this is like a popular topic where people talk about, should we keep them separate? If you're a Christian, should you even be involved in politics? What is your opinion on that? Church and politics, should they be together? Can they work together? What is your take on church and politics? Should they mix? Can they
Um,
mix in today's culture and in today's world?
I mean, I think we're called to live amongst this world.
Right.
We're called to be the light, and I think that's where specifically where you can influence and be a light within these specific systems. And I think that's where I wouldn't say they're necessarily mixed, but we can coexist where we're not compromising, but we can still have an influence. We
Mm.
can still help and bring light to certain topics, areas, things that are going on. We can certainly be an influence. Because I mean, vice versa. If we can't mix church and politics, or whether or not they can coexist, then we just kind of like bound the knee to whatever goes on.
Yeah.
So I think,
I think the perfect example of that is when you read the book of Daniel,
yeah,
because he was the second in command in the whole nation,
yeah,
and I'm pretty sure he had to make some very tough decisions in his walk and where he was, because number one, he knew that these people didn't like him. They were actually plotting on him, maybe
yeah,
to even kill him.
yeah,
Um, and he didn't he didn't compromise. He stood his ground, and even as what he would be considered with the vice president,
yeah,
he was still a solid Christian in his walk with God, still praying every day. They even made laws that you can't pray. He did it, and he opened his windows 3 times a day and was like, "I'm out here praying. Y'all ain't finna tell me to shut up." Um, so I think that it can. I think that it just takes a very uh, strong person that's not willing to compromise their faith to do that. Um, what is your take on that?
yeah. I mean, I wanted to use in the book of Mark when Jesus is being brought before Pilate. Um, Pilate, knowing that Jesus didn't break any law specifically, um, still decided to put up Barnabas
Yeah,
and crucify.
yeah,
Let
yeah.
Barnabas go and crucify Jesus, even though he knew that Jesus didn't break any law.
try to y'all his blood on y'all hands, not
Right,
mine.
exactly.
But it's really on
But
your
you
hands
see where
because
the
you have
agenda is self-interest.
self-interest.
Because in the end, he didn't take responsibility for it. He said, I leave it up to the
I leave
people.
it up to the people.
So I think that correlates to the negative aspect of what socialism looks like. So I leave it up to the people to take the blood off my hands. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a good example of kind of like what's going on now. We have the freedom to choose, but the agenda is to mandate against our freedom of choice.
Right.
It almost sounds identical to what Jesus was being on the stand.
Right. Well, they bring it up like this. It's like, well, you got the freedom to choose, but then you also gonna deal with these. You're gonna deal with these consequences of your choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, do I really have the freedom to choose? Because if I choose this way, I'm going to be persecuted or reprimanded, lose my job, whatever it is. Yeah. So do I really have the freedom to choose?
Yeah. And it even goes deeper because it says that Pontius Pilate in Rome, his wife had a like a prophesied dream. Mm-hmm. Then Jesus was innocent. And it was like, wait a minute, like that wasn't enough. Like, what you need? What else do you need? But because he was worried about himself, self-interest, making himself look good, making sure he's right with the people, he decided to take the responsibility off his hands and say, yeah, the people chose. That way he can continue to govern and look as if he helped the people and was for the people.
Yeah.
And it kind of contradicts everything the government's for. You have to stand and be able to enforce laws.
You have to be a good leader. Like, yeah. you can't just be like, this dude is innocent, he ain't doing anything wrong. But if y'all want to crucify him, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
but
really
because the majority crowd was for that, it kind of tied his hands. It tied his hands. But you see, like that's the negative light of socialism. You get enough people saying or voicing themselves and causing a stir. Of course, if you're trying to save yourself and save yourself as a governor or be in a position of authority, of course, it's not easy to compromise. Otherwise, if you do, you're looked at in the wrong light.
Yeah.
And guess what? You got less support moving forward. And now you jeopardize whether or not you're going to be in that position of authority moving forward.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that. So, I think that's my example to kind of give shed light on that. I think that's the best example we could use. And to fast forward on what we're dealing with now, with mandating, a vaccine, even against our own freedom of choice, is a difficult topic, but it's within our rights, and they're completely going against the Constitution and our laws.
Every politics is being woven into everything. Sports.
Yeah.
Man, it's so crazy. They're coming at Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
They're coming at a bunch
that might
of people.
Be a separate.
Yeah, that's we'll be able to have that talk another time. But man, dude, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you having me over.
Awesome time, man.
We're gonna continue to hang out and fellowship. But listen, God bless you guys. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bless you guys.